Hi, welcome back. I'm recording this during the 7th lunar month, also known as the Hungry Ghost month. Just to be clear, the 7th month on the lunar calendar doesn't always mean July. It usually falls between August and September on the Western calendar. In parts of Asia like Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, the 7th lunar month or the Hungry Ghost month is an important event, especially for Chinese Taoist and Buddhist communities. During this time, the gates of hell are believed to open, allowing spirits to wander among the living. It's not uncommon to see the streets lined with joss sticks and offerings of paper money, fruits, cakes, and sweets throughout the month. Strange and inexplicable occurrences tied to the supernatural are also said to be more common during this period, though whether coincidental or just tricks of the mind, we'll probably never fully know. During this month, there are rules and traditions that people observe to stay safe. Some of these include not disturbing or touching offerings left for the dead and not staying out too late at night. Even if you don't believe in ghosts, I still recommend following them. Better to be safe than sorry, right? Both stories today are cautionary tales about why these traditions exist in the first place. If you still decide to break them, well, at least you'll have a story to tell. This story comes from someone in Taiwan. Let's call her Jenny. Jenny's mother had always been deeply superstitious and followed every old wives' tale to the letter. She was particularly anxious during the Hungry Ghost month, constantly nagging at Jenny to observe every custom and tradition. She would remind her not to whistle at night, not to hang clothes outside after dark, and never to stay out too late during this time. Even though Jenny was already in her early 20s, a college student with a part-time job and her own car, her mother still insisted that she be home by 8 every evening. Jenny didn't believe in ghosts, but out of respect for her mother, she usually did as she was told, even limiting her own social activities. One evening though, she made an exception. Her best friend had just returned to the country after several years abroad, and a group of her closest friends had planned a reunion. Adam would host the gathering in his condominium. Adam's complex was gated, including the car park. It was an older place where the lifts to the car park and the lifts to the residential units were separate, and residents had to open and shut the car park shutters for their guests. Jenny was the only one driving, and Adam had given her specific instructions. Park on basement 2, right next to the lift so she wouldn't have trouble finding her way up. He waited at the shutters for her car, let her in, and met her upstairs where their other friends were already gathered. Dinner was lively. They ordered takeout, laughed, and caught up on each other's lives. Past 8 p.m., Jenny's mother started calling her every hour without fail. Each time, she asked when Jenny would be home. Jenny's friends teased her, saying it was funny how superstitious her mother was. But Jenny could hear the worry in her voice and promised she wouldn't stay too late. By the time they wrapped up, it was close to midnight. Adam would take a separate lift with their friends to see them off, and then get to the outside of the car park to wait for Jenny. As Jenny waited for the lift to the car park, another man appeared and stood beside her. Jenny barely paid attention, only glancing once before turning back to her phone. When the lift arrived, they both entered and rode in silence. The doors opened and Jenny stepped out, assuming the man had gone his own way. Jenny expected to see her car right next to the lift, but it wasn't there. She frowned and walked further, thinking she had misremembered. The echo of her footsteps followed her across the concrete floor as she searched. Still, she couldn't find her car. That was when she felt eyes on her. From the corner of her eye, she saw a figure standing between two cars. Jenny pretended she didn't notice, but as she moved between the pillars, the figure appeared again, now between two other cars. She sped up, her breathing quickening, and every time she glanced to the side, the figure reappeared, again and again. Several minutes must have passed before she finally reached for her phone to call Adam, but there was no reception. Her heart pounded, and she pressed herself against a pillar, face damp with sweat, considering whether to run to the lift to go back up to Adam's apartment. Then she felt a tap on her shoulder. Jenny jumped and spun around, ready to scream, but it was only Adam. "What are you doing down here, miss? You parked on B2, not B3, he said. He must have seen the look on her face because he kept quiet and allowed her to bend over and catch her breath. When Jenny finally straightened up, she looked around. The figure was gone. She blinked, confused but calmer now. She said that she must have been distracted and had forgotten to press the button for basement 2 when she was in the lift with the men. Adam said nothing. He followed her to basement 2, and sure enough, her car was right there next to the lift. Jenny drove home safely. By the time she crawled into bed, the warmth of her bed and sheets made her forget the incident. She didn't believe in anything supernatural and reasoned with herself that she was tired and that her mind had played tricks on her. She drifted off and slept soundly that night. The next morning, Adam called. He asked casually if she had slept well. When she said yes, he hesitated, then lowered his voice. "You said there was a man in the lift with you last night, right?" "Yeah," Jenny replied. "I checked the CCTV," he said slowly. "You were alone. There was no one else there." Jenny felt her stomach drop. Adam didn't stop there. After a pause, he added, "I didn't want to scare you last night, but a man killed himself in his car on B3 a few weeks ago. That's why I said to park on B2. From that day onward, Jenny never doubted her mother again. When the 7th month came around each year, she made sure she was always home by 8. This next story also comes from someone in Taiwan. Let's call her Ashley. This happened to her and her college friends some years back. One night, while the group was studying in the library, one of the boys, Jack, grew restless and suggested they take a break. Usually, this meant walking around campus or riding out to the nearest 24-hour restaurant for supper. But this time, Jack had other plans. Gleefully, he suggested taking a trip to the nearby Chinese cemetery. The group laughed, playing along, even suggesting games to make it more interesting. But Ashley frowned and said no. It was the 7th lunar month, the Hungry Ghost month. Her family were devout Taoists, and she firmly believed that during this time, the gates of the underworld opened and spirits wandered freely among the living. To her, the idea of going into a cemetery was beyond foolish. Her friends only laughed and told her to relax. It was just a joke. Jack, however, disagreed. He grew serious and said it was precisely because it was the 7th month that they had to do it. "Don't you want to find out if ghosts are real?" he asked. The group fell quiet for a few seconds before Jack burst into raucous laughter. "Come on, you don't seriously believe in that," he mocked. Ashley bit her lip, seething, and in the heat of the moment, agreed to go. A small part of her, though she would never admit it, hoped something would happen to prove Jack wrong. The group set off on their bicycles. The cemetery was still and quiet when they arrived. Grass grew unevenly between the tombstones, taller around cracked and faded ones, trimmed neatly near the ones still cared for by family. Some graves had half-burnt candles and joss-sticks in front of them, though few had fruits or cakes left behind, since offerings were usually taken back home by visiting family. At the gate, Jack turned and loudly challenged everyone to a game. They were to split into 2 groups, and whoever collected the most offerings would win. Everyone else in the group knew that these things were never to be touched. Perhaps it was pride, perhaps peer pressure, but they all agreed. Ashley, biting her tongue, had no intention of touching anything, but she followed along. They split up. Jack was unbothered, shining his torchlight onto photographs etched into the stones, laughing and making crude jokes about the faces staring back at him. At one point, he even called out to the spirits and dared them to stop him. The air grew heavier. Other than Jack's voice and the crunch of footsteps through grass, there was silence. The rest of his group began to feel uneasy. Still, Jack pressed on. Eventually, he found a grave with apples resting in front of it. Smirking, he bent down, slipped the apples into his backpack, and in the process stepped onto a pile of ashes. Without hesitation, he bit into one of the apples, crunching loudly. Claire, one of the girls in his group, hissed at him to stop. She said he had gone too far. Jack only grinned and said the apple was fresh and sweet, and it would be a shame to waste food. By now, Claire had had enough. She told him that the game was over and that they should leave. Jack teased her again, but eventually agreed, tossing the half-eaten apple between his hands as they walked back towards the gate. As they walked, Jack felt something cold brush against his back, then firmer on his shoulder. He spun around but saw nothing. Laughing, he said he must have felt a ghost, still chewing on the apple. At the entrance, Ashley's group rejoined them. The moment Ashley's eyes landed on Jack, she froze. She stumbled backward, her face drained of color, and she let out a sharp scream. The others rushed to her, asking what had happened, but she refused to explain. Jack, still munching, only laughed at her. Unsettled, the group quickly dispersed. Most went home, and Jack and Harry returned to their shared dorm room. The next morning, Harry left for class and returned to find Jack waiting, furious. Jack demanded to know why Harry had played such a prank. Confused, Harry asked what he meant. Jack dragged him to his bed, where the sheets were smeared with ashes. "Not funny," he snapped. Harry insisted that he had been in class all morning and had no idea what Jack was talking about. They usually never locked the door, so maybe someone else had snuck in, Harry suggested. Jack, still shaken, cleaned up but grew quiet for the rest of the day. The following afternoon, Harry returned from class to find their dorm room locked. When his key wouldn't turn, he knocked and called for Jack, but the only sound inside was a faint choking and gasping. Harry panicked and sprinted for help. By the time the office administrator opened the door with a master key, it was too late. Jack lay sprawled on the floor, eyes wide, hands clawing at his throat. His mouth was stuffed with chunks of apple, black, rotting, crawling with maggots. More apples were scattered across the floor, each one decayed and writhing with worms. Jack had choked to death. When Ashley and the rest of the group found out about Jack's passing, they never spoke of it again. They avoided one another, buried themselves in their studies, and drifted apart. But years later, when Ashley and Claire reconnected, Ashley finally told her what she had seen that night. When Jack had returned to the cemetery gates, laughing and eating the apple, there had been an old woman clinging to his back like he was giving her a piggyback ride. Her hair was neatly tied in a bun, and she wore a traditional floral top and pants. She could have been anyone's grandmother. But her face, Ashley never forgot her face. Deathly pale, eyes stretched unnaturally wide, her lips moving, though no sound came out of it. The old woman's face was pressed up against Jack's face, and she glared at him with every bite he took. Ashley was certain she had been mouthing the same thing over and over again. Mine, 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 mine.